Hi class, I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for tuning in to learn about the Louisiana Purchase and Exploration. This is from Chapter 10, Section 2. So before we learn that after a tied election, Jefferson became president and the Democratic Republicans reduced the power of the federal government. Now we're going to look at how the nation doubled in size when Jefferson acquired the Louisiana Purchase. Here's the vocab. You can pause the video and copy this vocabulary. So the key question, how did the United States acquire the Louisiana Purchase? You should be able to answer that question by the end of the video. So the West in the 1800s referred to the area between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River. By 1800, thousands of settlers were moving across the land. Many settled on land inhabited by Native Americans. So remember that Native Americans were already living on this land. This was their home, for years. And now all of a sudden these settlers are coming in and forcing the Native Americans out. And the settlers were forming these territories, and then they declared statehood as well. So although the western border of the U.S. was the Mississippi River, a lot of activity was happening farther west. For example, France and Spain were negotiating for ownership of the Louisiana Territory, and the Louisiana Territory was the vast region between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains. The Mississippi River was vital to Western farmers. They relied on it to transport their products to New Orleans, across the Gulf of Mexico, and then to the East Coast markets. It was actually cheaper for our settlers to ship their goods, down the Mississippi and then to the Gulf of Mexico and then up to the north, instead of traveling by land, just over to the east. So they relied on the Mississippi River, and New Orleans, the port at the end of the Mississippi River, was originally claimed by France, then turned over to the Spanish, and then returned back to France, France's powerful leader, Napoleon. So Napoleon planned to colonize the American territory, which brought America close to war. So remember, Napoleon is taking over all these countries in Europe, and now we find out that he wants to colonize land right next to us, this Louisiana territory. This was scary. Imagine someone that we're at war with now, and they're going to move in to land right next to us. So things did not go over smoothly. Just imagine if that happened now, how scary that would be. So the Americans thought that it looks like we're going to be at war, with France. Before giving Louisiana to the French, the Spanish closed the port of New Orleans to American shipping. Not good. Like I just said, we relied on this port. Here is a map. You can see in the tan, in the darker tan is the U.S., and then you can see outlined in the blue is the Louisiana Territory. And then down below, New Orleans, near the Gulf of Mexico. So to avoid hostilities, President Jefferson offered to buy New Orleans from France. So how do you think Napoleon responded? Surprisingly, he actually offered to sell President Jefferson the entire Louisiana Territory. This land was even larger than what the U.S. was at that time. So if he bought this land, the whole United States would double. So there's the picture. You can see how it's like the Louisiana Territory is actually bigger than what the U.S. was, so it would double if he purchased this land. So you can review the question and see if you can answer it. Oh, sorry, I'm not at the key question. I just messed that up. So ignore what I just said. Okay, so why would Napoleon want to sell Louisiana Territory? Well, we have a slave revolt in Haiti. A slave, Toussaint Louverture, had led this revolt, and it led to disastrous losses to the French, and we're going to look at that more closely in class. And France was also in a costly war against Britain, so it looks like money is more important to Napoleon than the land in the United States, in North America, next to the United States. So Jefferson was pleased by Napoleon's offer, but nowhere in the Constitution does it mention that the president has the right to buy land. And remember, Jefferson believes in this strict interpretation of the Constitution, that we stick by what it says. And if the Constitution doesn't say it, then we don't do it. Well, this isn't in the Constitution, so this is tough for him. But remember, he also thinks that the U.S. should be a land full of small farmers, and in order to have that, you need a land. So, what do you think he did? He went for it. On April 30th, 1803, the Louisiana Purchase was approved for $15 million, and that comes out to be about 3 cents per acre, which was pretty cheap, cheap price. So at that time, most Americans knew little about this territory, so it is time to explore what they just bought. And there's a review question. So you can pause the video and see if you can answer the question. All right, so moving on, exploring the Louisiana Territory. So this key question, what were some effects of exploring the Louisiana Territory? So after purchasing the Louisiana Territory, an exploration of the land was planned. Jefferson asked a young officer, Captain Meriwether Lewis, to lead an exploration of the Louisiana country. Then Lewis asked Lieutenant William Clark, a map maker and outdoorsman, good to have with him, to help him oversee a volunteer force or a corps. They called it the Corps of Discovery, but then it was soon known as the Lewis and Clark Expedition. Here are their pictures. So Clark was also accompanied by York, his African-American slave. York was a very skilled hunter, and he was also the first black person that the Native Americans had seen. So I think that's very interesting. You know, you had these Native Americans who are, you know, some of them maybe are not used to all these settlers. They're coming through. They have York coming. You know, it was the first time they saw someone, you know, with darker skin. So I just think, you know, it would have been an experience for everyone just to see, you know, the natives, and they're learning about the new settlers, and, you know, pretty cool. But York actually became a celebrity among the natives. Pretty neat. So Lewis and Clark set out for exploration in the summer of 1803. In the winter of 1803, they spent it in St. Louis. And you can go to St. Louis now, and they have the big arch, and you can actually climb up it. I climbed up it. It was pretty cool. And it is said to be the gateway to the west. So anyway, Lewis and Clark, along with their crew of about 40, left St. Louis in May of 1804. Now, Jefferson wanted them to explore the Missouri River to see if it led to a water route across the continent. Now, remember, the Louisiana Purchase does not cover all the way to the west, you know, to the Pacific Ocean, but he still wanted to see if there was a waterway that went all the way across. He told them to be kind to the natives, and he also wanted them to describe the landscape, the plants, the animals that they saw. You know, they were curious what was out there. So, what do you think they saw? The Lewis and Clark expedition ran into British fur trappers who were not happy to see them. They were afraid that they would now have to compete with the Americans in the fur trade. They were right. That would happen. So the explorers were assisted by Sacagawea along the way. She was a Shoshone Indian. Her language skills and knowledge of geography were extremely helpful. As they approached the Rocky Mountains, Sacagawea pointed out Shoshone lands. The chief recognized Sacagawea as his sister. You know, what a coincidence. I think that is so cool. And he gave Lewis and Clark horses that they could cross the mountains. Oh, so neat. So the expedition continued on the Columbia River, which leads to the Pacific Ocean. The group arrived at the Pacific coast in November of 1805, and then they returned to St. Louis in 1806. So Lewis and Clark brought back a wealth of information, and although there was no direct water route to the Pacific, Americans learned exciting reports about the West, this new land. The expedition produced the first good maps of the Louisiana Territory. So there it is. And look at their route. Pretty cool. Would you go on it? Would you do it? All right, so exploring the Louisiana Territory, now we're going to look at a southerly route. So Zebulon Pike explored, he started at St. Louis, and he wanted to see if there was a southerly route in 1806. And he wanted to find the sources of the Arkansas and the Red Rivers. He landed in Spanish territory and was arrested, okay? But he was released in 1807 and returned to the U.S. Pike's expedition brought back valuable descriptions of the land it explored, but not all the accounts were accurate. For example, Pike described the treeless Great Plains as a desert. Therefore, many Americans mistakenly thought that the plains were useless for farming, which was not the case. So reviewing our key question, you should be able to answer what were some effects of exploring the Louisiana Territory. All right, that's it for now. We are going to explore more in class, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for tuning in.